Okay, guys, this week we're in chapter 13. We're starting a whole new unit. We're going to be working with skirts. So you're going to be using your skirt slopers. We have our basic front skirt sloper and our basic back skirt sloper. And the first example that we're going to be doing is in chapter 13. We're going to be doing our high waist skirt for demo 901. So high waist skirt, it's on page 235, and that's what you'll be working with. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is grab a piece of paper to the length that you want your skirt to be. So, and then just like all of our front bodice demos, we need to establish our grain. So our front and our backs are going to be hinging off of you want to make sure they're on the same main grain line. So I'm going to fold my paper in half, and then using that, I'm going to use my L ruler, and I'm going to draft on that crease now. That will be my center line that I'm going to be using to help identify how everything balances. Now, important to note when we're doing our drafts, what you're basically doing is considering them to be kissing at the side seam. So we want to be thinking about them lining up. The front is on your right-hand side. The back is on your left-hand side. So this will be your center front. This will be your center back. And then we want to use this line here as our guide. This is our hip curve line. This is the low hip curve. This aligns with the seat of the fullest part of the human body. So I'm going to use my L ruler here to establish a perpendicular line to square off where my L curve is going to go. And I actually want to leave enough space here since this first one we're going to be doing is the high-waisted skirt. So you want to come down about 9 inches from the top of the paper here. And I'm using my L ruler to square and create these perpendicular lines. That's going to be my guideline. You're using your point paper. You can make sure you can see your guidelines underneath there, but you want to make sure you're transferring that over. So now my center front, you want to leave enough space between the two pieces to, I need more room here because we're going to be doing the extension for the high waist. So I'm going to actually lower this. I'm going to drop it using my graph ruler. Didn't leave enough paper for myself, guys. So this will be my new hip line. And this here is my front on the right-hand side, and this is my back on the left-hand side. So my skirt front, I'm aligning here. You want to leave about a 1/2 inch space in between. I'm going to use my weights to lock me down. And I'm looking at that point paper, making sure my center front is aligned. And I'm going to trace off my center front, my waist, noting my dart legs here, my waistband line area, and then marking my side seam all the way down to the bottom hem. I'm going to use my awl tool to note my dart legs, making sure they're nice and clear because we're going to need those to help us. So this is my our front skirt. Now we want to make sure we're doing the same thing with the back. So again, I'm aligning my center back with that hip line area so that they're relatively the same. and I'm going to trace off my side seam, my waistband, my dart legs, and noting my center front here. And using my awl to mark my dart apexes. Make sure you've got those dart legs copied. Okay. So now we have our center back. You can remove the slopers, and this is your center front. Make sure that your hip line intersects here with your center back and center front. We're going to be using those hip lines as notch points to help connect the two panel pieces together. And then I just want to make sure we're going to start here with 2 darts, and then we're going to show you how to convert those to a single dart. So a high-waisted skirt with a single dart. So right now, I'm just copying over what were the original 2 darts on the front and on the back. For our high-waisted skirt. Now, high waist is a design line. For the purposes of this particular example, we're going to do a 2-inch high waist. So the versions that you see here in your book, they're probably about 4 inches. But for the example that we're going to do 2 inches. So what you need to do is, first off, we need to extend our center front and our center back up, extend those lines through space. So I'm going to use my L ruler just to make sure everything is stabilized. I'm aligning it with the center back, and I'm going to extend up. And then the same thing with my center front. I'm using my L ruler here and extending that up off of my, so we did extending the center back and extend the center front. Now, I need to take my sloper pieces again. So remember, the back is on the left, the front is on the right, and I'm going to take my piece and flip it upside down. So when I'm taking each of these pieces and I'm flipping them upside down, and I'm aligning the center's grain to the center grain. So my center back grain of my sloper is aligning with the center back that we drafted. And I want to bring this down until the side seam waistband point almost touches my original draft. So I'm right here at this point. I've hooked my center back grain on. I'm dragging this down until these 2 pieces practically are touching or kissing. So then I'm going to kind of note for myself, this was my original dart legs and waistband on here. And here's my side seam. This was my true dart apex previously. And then making sure, because we're going to be doing a 2-inch extension. So from my original waistband point, from the original tracing of the sloper, when it was regular here, we're going to extend up 2 inches. So I'm just using my pencil, and I'm putting a mark at 2 inches up from that original center back position. And then where I have traced off this upside down side seam, I too am going to be marking up 2 inches on the side seam. So you'll notice that the point on the center back is lower than the point here on the side seam. We're going to be using our blend tool to blend those back together. Meanwhile, let's do the same thing on our center front. I'm going to hook my center front grain up with the extended line. I'm dragging this down until my waistbands connect here at the side seam waistband. and I'm going to transfer that side seam extension to my pattern, noting where my dart legs are and the dart apex. So making sure you mark that off because we're going to be using those as a point of reference in a moment. Same thing with the back. We want to mark up 2 inches along the center front. And this new side seam that we've extended, we're also marking 2 inches. So again, like the back panel, your center front will be slightly lower than the side seam. We will be blending that. But before we draft our waistbands, I want to talk about our dart. So right now we have 2 darts, but maybe we're going to turn this into a skirt. We want this just to be a high waist, hourglass skirt with just 1 dart on the front and 1 dart on the back. Nice and clean and simple. So what we need to do is first, we're going to find the center between our 2 darts. So I'm going to take my ruler and we're going to find the middle between these 2 dart apexes and mark. And find the middle between those which would have been in our extension and mark. And now I'm going to draft a line, a guideline for myself, connecting the new dart center. This is going to be the new center of our new single dart for the front. We'll do the same thing with our back, noting where the middle between these 2 dart apexes are, using our graph ruler to identify that, marking that placement. Same thing where the darts would be at the top, connecting those 2 points as our new dart center guideline. Okay, so we have a guide where the new single dart is going to live. Now we need to transfer the dart intake from the 2 that we have at the back and the 2 that we have at the front into a single dart here at the center. In order to do that, we need to measure how much we have total in our dart intake at the back and create a single dart. So you're going to have to use your ruler and you're going to need to measure. So my back dart here is 1 inch and 1/8, and this front dart here is 7/8. So beautiful. 2 inches total. You're going to need to measure how much you have on your sloper. It might not be 2 inches. It's whatever amount of dart pickup you have here total. So that means now that I have 2 inches total that I need to accommodate in my new dart when I go to draft it. But I don't want 2 inches on each side of the leg. I need to split that in half, and half will go to the left, to the front, and half will go to the back. So I can then mark, and I'm going to mark here in red so that you can see what I'm marking. So half of 2 inches is 1 inch. So 1 inch to the front and 1 inch to the back of that dart center. Then I can draft the new dart legs. I want to find, notice on your center back, the longer dart will be closest to the center back. The shorter dart will be closer to the side seam. We're going to use that halfway mark between as the new dart length. The dart leg will come from my new dart pickup. And now I need to accommodate what I'm doing here at the waistband. So again, notice on the back panel, the center back is lower than the side seam. We want to use our curve tool to blend those back together. So you want a nice gradual blend here. If you're using your French curve tool, you're working with approximately between the number 19 and 10 is usually a good gradual curve, but you're going to need to shift your ruler around until you find a nice curve. Remember, always off of a side seam or a center front, you need to make that perpendicular. So you're going to extend the first 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch off of that so that it's a nice straight line before you begin drafting your curve. And then you're going to gradually curve that into your new side seam. Now our dart legs will extend up from that original waistband point up into the waistband. Your apex, when you go to transfer that, remember the punch of your dart is always going to be 1/2 of an inch away. And before you complete drafting your waistband, you're going to need to close this dart and true the waistband line. So just like we did with our dart exercises, I'm going to cut this in half to make it easier. True. So just like the bodice exercises, in order to true our dart, we fold on our apex. We fold on our first dart leg. And then we want to close the dart. I need to fold on the other dart leg so it folds smoothly. You want to close your dart to ensure that your waistband, now notice, see if I were to just use the draft, it would be uneven. So we're going to use our curve tool to blend this section here as our final waistband draft. So I'm gently moving my curve tool around to find a nice position here. You will use your tracing wheel to identify your dart pickup. I'm going to draw this in red so that you can see this is going to be my blended waistband curve line. And notice that seam allowance goes up. We're still on the front, we're still on the back. Now in the final draft, you'd have 1/2 inch off of each of these dart legs. Now remember this section here, in the red, goes, this part here is where we're going straight up. From where our original waistband was, that goes straight up into what that dart. So you want to make sure that that dart, when you close it, the knot, you are going to have a punch point where that dart leg turns. So you're going to blend here. And now your seam allowance. So we would have 1/2 inch off of the dart legs. 1/2 inch off of the dart legs. And for the waistband of your skirt, we're going to do a 1/2 inch. I'm going to show you how to do a waistband facing. We'll blend those together. This is your center back. This is your side seam. Now, we talked a little bit about zippers in our previous tops example. You're going to need to extend 1 inch for seam allowance if you're doing a zipper. So this grain will maintain as your center back grain, which means that it will need a notch when you go to put your seam allowance in. And then we are going to extend 1 inch off of the center back grain for our seam allowance so that we can put a zipper in. One inch for the zipper. Then make sure that you are notching your dart legs into the seam allowance, that we've kept we have a punch mark here for where those dart legs pivot, and then you have a punch mark 1/2 inch away from the original dart leg. You'd have a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the side seam, all the way down for the hem, 2 inches for the hem. And that will be our high waist skirt. Back panel. Cut 2. This is a size 8. Remember the year and season. And make sure you have included your name. Now our front. We still have to convert the 2 darts to a single dart. Same process that we just did with the back. We need to transfer the dart pickup that we have here from the 2 darts into a single dart. So you need to, again, you're going to measure how much you have in that dart pickup. So on the front dart, we have 3/4 of an inch. Make sure you're measuring yours. On my back dart, I have 5/8 of an inch. So that means that my back dart is going to be 7/8 total. So I need to split 7/8 equally over the front and the back. So I need to, at my waistband, the original waistband, make sure that I'm splitting 7/8 equally. And that becomes my new dart legs. And I'm going to draft those new dart legs. I'll do it in red so that you can see that this is or blue, green, blue. So this is my new dart leg. But I also have the space here up at the top where it extends and we need to blend our waistband. So just like we did with the back, using my French curve, I'm going to blend my center front into my side seam. Nice gradual curve. I'm going to extend my new dart legs up into my waistband. These become where I'll put my punch mark when I go to draft my seam allowance. Remember, I have a punch mark here, which is a 1/2 inch away. Each of these dart legs will require a notch. And then the center front would be cut on the fold so that you don't have a seam. So make sure you're marking that for yourself, and that when you open up this pattern piece, you are creating a notch for the center front. Make sure you're also transferring the notches from at the hip level so that becomes matching points on your front and back pattern pieces. And the other thing that you want to do when you are all said and done, before you transfer all your seam allowance, is you want to walk your front and back pieces together to make sure that they align. This one will be our high waist skirt. This would be the front panel. Cut 1 on fold. This is a size 8, your year and season, and your name. And that is how we draft a high waist skirt with a single dart.